Hi everyone, I'm the Rambling Photon, and today I would like to talk about a couple of my pet peeves in science, and it has to do with the March for Science that just happened, but also Bill Nye the Science Guy and some of his stuff about particularly gender. I haven't watched all of his other stuff, but the gender stuff seems to be big right now, so it seems appropriate to talk about. Okay, so first thing. When you're arguing about science, don't cite consensus. It's a terrible idea. So, part of the nature of science is that science acknowledges that we are wrong. Okay? We make approximations which we know are not 100,000% true. Okay? But the important thing is that it's less wrong than a previous approximation. That's the important part. It's less wrong. Now, the thing about this is that because we acknowledge that we're wrong, it means that when you have a consensus, you know that the consensus is also wrong. It's just a question of to what degree. Okay? So, when you're arguing science, do not cite consensus. Why? This consensus is wrong. The question is, how wrong? To determine how wrong a consensus is, you need data. So when you're arguing science, you should be citing data. Okay? So it really bugs me when I hear 97% of climate scientists agree that such and such and blah, 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 blah. I don't care. It's a question of whether the data backs it up or not. Okay? Argue from the data, not from the consensus. Now, the other part is when consensus is data. Okay? When consensus is the data, for example, if you're arguing about what is the definition of a thing, okay? Guess what? Then you need to cite consensus. Then you need to cite, 97% of people think this thing means this thing. Okay? Great. Then your data is your poll, basically. Okay? That's the only time that you can cite the consensus, is when the consensus is your data and is crucial to your argument. Now, the problem is when you're in that situation, okay, and now this gender thing is sort of a perfect example of that, they don't cite any data even when the consensus would be the data. Okay? So in Bill Nye's thing, he had a couple of different segments. Both were kind of really super cringy, so I'm not gonna splice in segments of it anywhere. I assume that you can look it up and find it. So the first one that's hyper cringy is the ice cream sketch that he did. And now the question is basically what is the claim being made about the ice cream? Okay, it's not part of his analogy. So in if his ice cream analogy, which is weird and imperfect and just makes no sense, if he's talking about sexualities, then the question is, how good an approximation is assuming everybody's vanilla? Okay, so if vanilla is the straight one that is trying to like electroshock therapy or pray the gay away or whatever, pray the other flavors away. So if we want to apply that directly to the modern our environment, okay, most people are straight. Okay, 95+% of people are straight. As a first approximation, saying everybody's straight is not bad. It's actually pretty good. Now, do you lose some of that subtlety? Yes. But again, as a first approximation, it's a very good one to just say, well, everybody's straight. Okay? Certainly better than saying everybody's gay or everybody's bi, because that's not as true as saying everybody's straight. Now, the next part of this is saying that, okay, it exists on a spectrum. Okay, fine. That doesn't really change anything. But then when you start talking about gender and gender expression, okay, how many people think that gender means sex? That is sort of an important part of the discussion. The definition is important, but they never talk about the side that sort of thinks, well, yeah, there's only two genders because there are only two sexes, or there are only two genders because there are only two sets of pronouns, and they're linked quite intimately with biological sex, or at least that's what it seems to be. The data seems to support that, since roughly 99% of people, they have their biological sex align with their gender, or vice versa. So in that case, the consensus is important to the data, so then you can cite consensus. That's it. Okay, there have been other videos talking about how the rest is cringe. One thing that I did not notice is people who are pointing out that saying that you're entitled to whatever sex you want is kind of rapey. Yeah, you're not entitled to whatever sex you want. You're entitled to the sex that you are able to get from a consenting partner. That's it. No more. More is rape. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts on that. If you like my content, like, share, subscribe, all that shit. Hope to catch you next time. This has been the Rambling Photon.